Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's a brand new week here on FPC Radio Live. It's June 5th. Happy high school graduation day anniversary for most people out there. A lot of people, June 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, everyone's like, oh, it's been X amount of years since I was in high school. John, can you count back that far for you?
It would be 42 years.
Ooh.
So it would be 42 times 365, and then I guess add on another 10 days for the leap years. So, if you want to do quick math.
Quick math.
That's a lot of days. It's a lot of days.
That sounds like a lot of show your work. So I'll pass on doing that type of math.
No, I calculator go that high. I mean, does it just go to the E signal that you get?
Well, I think my day was easy. It's June 6th tomorrow. Obviously, a lot of things happened on June 6th in the history of time. Most notably, of course, D-Day. But obviously, it makes it easy for me to remember that day. And it was 19 years ago for me. So, it's getting there. It's getting there. So
mine would be 15,340 days. I just did the quick math on my calculator.
Okay, well, you know what's more than that? The amount of time it's been since the Maple Leafs have won the Stanley Cup. They're much longer than that. So, yeah.
Man, you'd have to go back to 1968?
Yeah, 67.
Oh, 67? 67, yeah. Wow, I was 4.
Yeah, it was
been their last Stanley Cup.
It's, as Stained used to say, it's been a while. So, anyways, last night, the Heat pretty much doing this is how they've won basketball games this postseason. They've been deadly from 3-point shooting, and they've made late rallies, and that's exactly what happened yesterday against Denver. They were kind of, hanging around for most of the game, and then I saw someone post call him Jimmy Neutron, and I thought it was Kyle. I would gladly try to start every show from here on out for the eternity of time mentioning the Leafs Stanley Cup drought. And I'm actually going to try to do that now that I think about it. So it'll be a creative way to do it. That's what I'll do. So anyways, sorry, telemarketer. If anyone heard that little beep come across the airwaves, that's what it was. Anyways, yesterday, I believe 17 three-point shots made by the Heat, which is a postseason record for their franchise. Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo had a pretty solid, pretty much same stat line, 21 and 9 points and rebounds, which actually kind of remarkable. And considering what you've gotten from both of them collectively for the last, 8 to 10 games, that was exactly what they needed. But most importantly, you had guys like Duncan Robinson obviously hitting big shots. And right before I get interrupted there, I was going to say, someone likened him to the cartoon character Jimmy Neutron, and now I can't get that image out of my head. So, impressive win for the Heat. Something that I didn't think was going to happen. I thought they were going to be more likely to steal Game 1, but impressive win nonetheless. And now they have home court advantage heading back to Miami.
The Heat have done this throughout the playoffs. It seems like they play one outstanding quarter in a game, and it's enough for them to win. So they lost by 11 in Game 1, and they were down 8 going into the fourth quarter. So in the first 7 quarters of this series, you said Denver's clearly the better team, but then the Heat put together a great fourth quarter, outscored Denver 36-25, and they come away with a win.
And look, I mean, 3-point shooting, it's the name of the game here. And, we've seen that be a factor, obviously, against the Celtics. Not only were they hitting their 3-point shots, but the Celtics were not making theirs. So it led to a pretty huge gap. But look, it's hard to beat a team that, or it's hard to put away a team that hits 3-point shots at such a high level. But conversely, John, that's a tough way to live by if you're Miami, because to me, I'm not necessarily concerned about Denver. I was a little surprised that Miami won this game. But in order for Miami, I think, to win this series, they got to do pretty much the same thing. And that is, like I said, hit a record number of 3-point shots, because, quite frankly, they're just not getting it done consistently enough in every other area. And that's something where it's like, okay, great win, but I'm not sitting here saying, oh, well, maybe I should rethink this. I'm like, no, I think this was a really nice win. I think it's going to surprise us, but they could go to Miami and split, and I'd still have all the confidence in the world that Denver is going to win the next 2 games. Does that make sense?
You think they're going to win the next 2 games? I still
No,
think
no,
they're.
no. I'm
Oh,
saying,
after
yeah,
splitting the next
yeah.
two,
I'm
sure.
saying
Yeah. Oh,
they
yeah.
can,
No.
yeah.
That makes sense. Absolutely. I mean, Denver's the better team. Now, doing a little bit more research here, look, what Denver's done in this postseason has been remarkable. They've been the best team without question. But let's look at the 4 opponents they've played on their way to potentially winning the championship. They beat a 42-win Minnesota team in the
Mm-hmm.
first round. They beat a 45-win Phoenix team in the second round, a 43-win Laker team in the conference finals, and now they're playing a 44-win Miami Heat team in the NBA finals. Like, I understand that those teams were better in the postseason than they were during the regular season. You know, the Lakers got on a roll. Phoenix still had Durant and Booker, and we see what Miami's done by beating Milwaukee and the Celtics to get to the finals. But the point being, it's been a nice road for Denver. They have had a home court advantage throughout all of this, and good for them. You know, they don't. You know, you're not going to take it away from them if they go ahead and win this. But there was some resistance last night because Miami, which was down 15 in the second quarter. You know, the thing about Miami that's really tough to deal with when you're playing them, they just don't go away. Like, they just never give up. They just kind of hang in there. And next thing you know, you're in a 1 or 2 possession game in the fourth quarter, and you're probably thinking, how weren't we able to put this team away? It's frustrating. They just kind of hang in there.
I'm telling you, it's the 3-point shooting. I mean,
Sure.
it's
Keep in it.
Well, because again, I mean, think about it. 17 3-pointers, and it's like, you know, those. There's something about it. If you believe in momentum, you believe in, you know, the ripple down effect through your players. I mean, those type of shots create more excitement, so to speak, than just a you know, a regular layup or whatever, a little mid-range shot or whatever. So you hit a big 3, all of a sudden, you know, the crowd's cheering, the announcers are going off, you're making faces, all this stuff. So there's a ripple effect. So I think the value. I mean, obviously, to me, it's obvious. The Heat are very much a 44 win team. But and I don't have the numbers in front of me, and if someone feel free to correct me, but I think they're just shooting so far above their average that Jimmy Butler could be relatively average for the last 10 games, and they've won a majority of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, the 3-point shot has been their bread and butter. I mean, it really has. I mean, there's no doubt about it. When it's not going, they lose. But more often than not, like you said, I mean, they're going to have at least one really good quarter where they're going to hit a lot of these shots. And guess what? Those points add up quickly. They add up quickly. And all of a sudden, you know, a team that was down 12, 13 points in a matter of a minute and 30 seconds, they go on a 12 or 14-2 run. And there you go.
Yeah, I mean, they've done this throughout the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee, the Knicks, the Celtics, and again last night. And this is kind of a thing in the league. I mean, look at the Celtics, who we all agree is better than the Heat, but they have trouble defeating them. 2 out of the last 3 times they met in the conference finals, Miami came out on top. The Celtics, when they shoot 40% or better from 3, are 39-2 this year. When they don't shoot 40%, they're a sub 500 team. Like, their talent should be good enough that they could get through that minefield of shooting 34, 35% in a given game, and they can't. So, yeah, this is a 3-point league. You know what was interesting? Just thinking about last night's game, and I don't want to bore everyone with math, but I'll do this as quickly as I can. There's 4 different ways you can score on a basketball court: in the paint, outside the arc, at the free throw line, or in the vast territory between the 3-point line and the paint.
Yeah.
There were 219 points scored last night. Do you know how many points came from that vast territory between the paint and the 3-point line, which used to be called the mid-range, if you will? Out of 219 points.
Less than half?
16. Each team had 8 points in that giant area.
No,
I couldn't believe it. It doesn't even make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any. It almost seems impossible. But just all you do is you go to the team and see how mmany points they scored in the paint, from the free throw line, and from 3, and then you add those all up and take that away from what they scored. 219.16 came in that, what we call the mid-range. I mean, I guess the mid-range is also inside the paint, but you get it.
Yeah.
Outside the paint, but not quite at the arc and not from the free throw line. There's those other points that's where Kevin Durant made a living, or where Jason Tatum should make more of a living, right? Because those are probably it's almost like it's useless now that the teams don't want players taking that. They're like,
well,
take
I was just going to say,
that.
I mean, it kind of speaks to how the game is played now.
It's analytic.
And I feel like no team frustratingly epitomizes that more than the Celtics, because they just live and die by the three, and sometimes recklessly. And look, you can ask any Celtics fan, and that's one of their number one complaints is, we saw Denver in game one not necessarily be too strong from three early on and then just hammer inside the paint. And guess what? It worked. The Celtics tend to refuse to do that. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's that game is, we saw that late 90s, early 2000s, that's where the game was played. Yeah, there was 3-point shooters, but it was more of a specialty. Ray Allen, those type of guys, they would just, it's certainly not what it is today. And it gives you some exciting basketball, absolutely. But at times you get some really poor basketball where you feel like they got a bunch of George Costanzas out there and they're just chuckers, just chucking the ball, and just throwing it up there. So.
Yeah, I couldn't believe those numbers. I really thought, I was like, I did them again and again, and I'm like, this makes no sense, because that's like most of the court is that area. The paint is only as big as it is, and the 3-point arc, I'm not going to go all the way to half court. Other than Dame Lillard and Steph Curry, people aren't taking logo threes generally.
But Marcus Smart tends to throw a bunch of those.
Decides he wants to take logo threes because he's clearly as good a shooter as Lillard and Steph Curry. But yeah, that's, in a sense, it's kind of frustrating to the point where, I don't think the league's going to do this. Do you change where the 3-point arc is? Do you take away the corner three, which is really the rage because it's a foot and a half closer than the rest of the threes? And then, you just start the three out near the bench? I don't know. That's like a discussion for another day.
Yeah. But, I mean, look, it's
like
tough.
Moving the hash marks in football, which they did do in the early 70s. The hash marks were further apart. I'm that old to remember that. And then they moved them closer in, and it kind of opened up the offense a bit.
But, to be honest, though, and unfortunately, because of my, my perspective, I'm with you a little bit more. I think that I wish there was a little bit more balance, a little bit more traditional basketball, I guess, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, unfortunately for us, there are enough people that like how the game's played now. And look, if you're a kid growing up, who do you want to be? Well, you want to be Steph Curry.
Steph Curry.
Yeah, and you want to have the pretty high arcing shot that doesn't hit any rim. You want to have the, like I was saying earlier, those type of shots, a save for like a alley oop or a nice dunk or something like that. They're going to garner the biggest reaction and the biggest emotional whatever. So again, that's. Yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. That's another thing I'm going to try to mention on top of getting rid of the shootout, of course. But he says the NHL should get rid of the trapezoid, and I 100% agree with that, especially being a goalie, especially being someone who was a fan of Marty Brodeur, and he was being pretty much the reason why they added that in there. But yeah,
that's cool when there's a rule change because of a player. That's the ultimate compliment, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. At least in terms of the player is big enough to bring attention to something that could be a problem. Now, again, I think it's outdone its usefulness in the NHL. Let's put it that way. The trapezoid, sort of like the shootout. Like I will begrudgingly accept that the shootout was important in order to bring in a broader fan base.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it, and at this point, I do think it's very much outstayed its welcome and should be completely eliminated from the discussion. But I don't think I'm ever going to get what I want, John. Unfortunately, it's a sad day realizing that's just probably not going to happen. But I'm going to keep campaigning against it anyways. Kind of like, you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to make this any sort of political thing. So,
no, don't go there. It's Monday, not Saturday or Sunday.
No, yeah, that's yes, John. That's my weekend routine. And it just so happens that I'm bombarded with that stuff. But So, anyways,
You need football back. That's for
I
sure.
do. There's a void on my weekends now, especially certainly now that both the Bruins and Celtics are done, and I just haven't gotten into baseball mode yet. It takes a little while. It's kind of like my routine. I need a breather. I need a break. But unfortunately, that's just not going to happen. But NBA Finals, going back to Miami, series tied at 1 apiece. Saturday, Vegas Golden Knights,
Hmm.
game 1. Nice victory over the Florida Panthers, which I very much enjoyed, John. Um, I've been thinking about this. I've had some advice given from other teams that have been, do you root for the team that eliminated the Bruins, or do you feel better if they go on and win the Stanley Cup? And I say no, 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 no. Actually, I'm thrilled to watch them get rolled over. I didn't think they get rolled over in game 1. I just thought Vegas Vegas, I think, is very clearly the better team, and I think can continue to put pucks in the net, something that teams haven't been able to do against Florida since the Bruins, and obviously the Bruins had them on the ropes. So nice big win for them in game 1, really a statement, and they look like the team that's been here before, albeit only about 4 or 5 of the original Golden Knights are still on this team. They look like a veteran savvy team, and certainly looked like it against Florida. And you know what? If Florida cannot dictate the play in this series, I don't think it's going to go too long. So, and side note, Vegas fans, I apologize. That might have been the death knell for your Stanley Cup hopes. Is me having confidence in you. So, FYI, just be prepared if whatever I say, the exact opposite happens.
In listening to you and Jim on Friday, the clear opinion of both of you guys is that Vegas just has more ways to beat you than Florida does, right? And whenever you have a 7-game series, give me that theme. They won 5-2 game 1. Maybe they can win 2-1 tonight, or 5-4 in game 3, whatever it may be. They just seem to have more ways to win, which we thought the Bruins had.
Yeah, well, they did. It just didn't work. Obviously, it didn't work out that way because they didn't play to their
right. And they scored 27 goals in the series. Like, if you went into that series and the Bruins are going to score 27 goals, they're going to blow them out in 5 or 6. 27 goals is 4 goals a game. That should be enough to win with the Vezina Trophy goallie. And to me, it was as much the goalies not stepping up, and
the defense.
Well.
The defense just
that was a problem.
They just played well below expectation, and that was obviously a big, because look, in years past it's always been, well, where's the offense? Well, the offense was there. It was just, unfortunately, the defense kind of collapsed. But yeah, so no, just like the Bruins, they do have more ways to beat you, Vegas. But again, that's great and all on paper. This game just isn't on paper. That's the problem. Talk to the Bruins. On paper, again, they were better team across the board, but no, like Vegas came out strong. They put the puck in the net. And I think that was the most important thing, because again, teams just haven't been able to score consistently against Florida. And here we are, game 1. You put up more goals than any team but the Bruins in one game. So it's encouraging for Vegas to get out on that strong start. And might I add, the nice stick save by Aiden Hill was pretty awesome. I've made a save like that before, John. Don't have any footage of it. I don't think they had cameras back then. No, obviously.
You're not that old.
No,
that
look,
been if I was a goalie.
Look, I mean, nowadays, kids can have their entire career on film. I have some grainy VHS tapes occasionally, and one clipping in a newspaper. So it is different. There was a big difference from mid 90s, early 2000s to now. So, which I'm kind of envious about, because I wish I had it, because I would just sit at home and watch clips of myself all day, obviously.
Wow, you sound like Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
Or someone like that.
Well, look, if you were as good as a goalie as I was, you'd watch clips of yourself.
That's true.
As well.
I hadn't considered.
Yeah. Well, like I said, think about that next time, John. No, seriously, it's awesome. If you're a kid now growing up playing sports, is literally you have so much to look back on. I mean, I do have a few that I might, VHS tapes I might have to dig out of storage, but I wish I had more. Anyways, great save by Aiden Hill. I thought it was pretty awesome. Obviously, this is a lesson to everyone. Always, always keep your stick on the ice and put some oomph behind that shot, because I can't even remember who had that opportunity, but nice little soft floater gave Aiden Hill an opportunity to make that save. You fired that puck in the net. It's very unlikely that he stops that. So, very entertaining game nonetheless. And like I said, I think Vegas just kind of really came out solid. But as we all know, don't take Florida lightly. Just when you think that they have their backs up against the wall, we know what happens. So
the Tom Brady effect.
Yeah. Don't ever
came
count
into
them
effect
out.
last night for the Heat, and here are the Panthers facing a 1-0 deficit for sure. But Aiden Hill, who was their fourth or fifth goaltender they've cycled through here, is playing a really, really high level. Like you guys were talking about on Friday, Vegas wins this thing and he puts up really impressive numbers in the Stanley Cup final. Maybe he's a Conn Smythe Trophy winner. It also seems like they're a team that's just getting contribution from a bunch of people. Where with Florida is Matt Tkachuk and Bobrovsky. Those are like the two potential Conn Smythe winners.
Florida, yes, and Florida, look, they're a very gritty, scrappy team, and if they're not, I'm not sitting here saying that they're cheap or dirty. It's just the style in which they play. Look, they get away with a lot of little cross checks, a lot of post whistle nonsense, And if other teams don't play into that, which I thought the Bruins did a really good job of early in their series and kind of got away from that later in the series and fell into that trap. Vegas, same thing. They did a good job not really dealing with that. They took advantage of it. They got power plays off of it. They didn't lose power plays. You know what I mean? You watch some of these post whistle little scrums, and you're seeing a lot of little cross checks, little cheap little shots that a lot of these Panthers players take. And look, I'm not saying oh my God, it's a disgrace to hockey. No, it's dare I say it's part of the game. It's just, this is how they play. So if you're Vegas, do not get stuck. Don't get drawn into that. Don't play down to that. Take the lumps, let them get the penalty calls, because eventually they're going to start, we saw it in game one already. They an abundance of penalty calls for a lot of that little bit of nonsense. So anyways, before we go, John, I got to bring this up. Romeo Dobbs made a comment talking about how good Aaron Rodgers was, but he believes Jordan Love can do a lot of the same things. And if we're talking about the production from last season, yeah, I can kind of see it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rodgers was way off last year, whether there was injury concerns with the thumb and the ribs, whether he wasn't all in on the season, which is always a possibility with him, or maybe he's about to turn 40 this December. So at the age of 39, he started to regress as a player. I mean, all of those are on the table. He didn't play at a real high level last year. He was, to me, a mediocre quarterback. I mean, the numbers prove that out. So, yeah, if Jordan Love can match those numbers and maybe add some with his legs, then, yeah, he can go out and do a similar job. And maybe the Packers are 9-8, make the playoffs as a wild card or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to take a lot to match Rodgers' production from a year ago, because he put up more interceptions last year than he had, it felt like, in 3 years combined.
Yeah, it might have been, actually. It might have been.
It was pretty close. I think he had a dozen interceptions and maybe 13 or 14 the last 3 years. The guy never throws interceptions except last year, which it almost felt like he had this kind of I don't give a bleep here.
Well, and look,
50,
I mean,
50 ball or whatever the case was. Maybe they were behind more. Maybe the injury concerns. Who knows? Maybe he just lost a little bit. But he did throw more interceptions last year than he had at any time since his first or second year in the league.
Well, look, I mean, we talked about it heading into the season last year. Where do you pick up the production left by Devontae Adams? And they never found that. And that's one of the things that we were spot on. If you go back, because we were constantly having those conversations about the Chiefs and the Packers, because they both lost their number one wideout. But I think we both were very much in agreement that the Chiefs did a far better job. You're not going to replace those players individually, like with one player. That's that's foolish if you think you're going to do that. But you can do a much better job than certainly what the Packers did, and the Chiefs did that. So now Jordan Love doesn't have Devontae Adams either, but I think some of the mystery and the well, we don't really know yet. What are we going to get from him? We've seen a little bit, but not on a consistent basis. So yeah, so it'll be interesting. Obviously, one of the bigger storylines, conversely, like how does Aaron Rodgers play with the Jets? Is this going to be another? Yeah, everything's kind of mirrored Brett Favre so far. So what the hell? Why not? Maybe the Jets start out strong and then kind of tail down the stretch a little bit. But what if we get a Packers Jets Super Bowl, John?
No, that would be
Ooh,
interesting.
yeah,
That would be very, very interesting. The thing about Rogers, he's really embraced New York, like he's New York's Forrest Gump. He's like
yeah,
everywhere. Knicks games, Mets games, going to see Wicked, going to see Rent. Like, I'm surprised he's not hosting a show on FAN at this point.
yeah.
He's really embraced New York, which again, you're going from Green Bay to New York is culture shock, right? I mean, there's not much to do in Green Bay. In New York, you do whatever you want any time of the day. So he's doing a pretty good job of embracing that. And so I forget the Jets were 8-3 back in 2008, the year that Brett Favre was there, and then he ended up getting injured, and they kind of fell off the map and ended up 9-7 and missed the playoffs. And then he goes to Minnesota and has a really good year in 2009, gets them to the NFC Championship game, and of course throws an interception late, which is something Brett Favre did repeatedly in playoff games.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think Rodgers is better now than Favre was then. I've always felt he was a slightly better quarterback than Brett Favre because of the interception. So we'll see what happens in that situation. So yeah, there are those similarities without question going from Green Bay to New York. But you make a great point about the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost Tyreek Hill. It seemed like he had stayed his course or overstayed his welcome there, because we remember in the playoff loss to Cincinnati the year before, he's barking at Mahomes on the sideline and acting a little crazy. But you brought in Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and they gave you really good production. So at least you were able to keep the train rolling. And you also had Travis Kelce. Losing Devontae Adams and replacing him with unproven rookies maybe isn't the best way to go.
Trust me, the only people that didn't think the Chiefs did a pretty good job of retooling are Chiefs fans, because
Right.
we know why, because they want to they want to inflate their guy, and I get it. I understand what you're doing as fandom. I get it, but the reality of it was they did a really good job of replacing that talent and kind of retooling to benefit their team. The Packers did not, but regardless, we got about 50 some odd days before the Hall of Fame game, John. So football is just around the corner, and it's going to be here before we know it. But we're going to say goodbye for the day. Tomorrow we'll be back, of course, and we'll talk more about Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final, which is tonight, and anything else that may or may not come down the pipeline. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.